We're live. This Life in Tech, episode 77. I'm Jason.
I'm Dan, and we have our returning guest, Mr. AirPods.
AKA Dr. Ken.
Thursday's starting to turn into academic Thursday. I like it.
Well, I prefer my other name for it, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, I think we're going to go that way anyway.
I'm gonna start being like dude in Diggstown at the very end.
Diggstown.
Wow. You're throwing out some old movie.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Oh God, man. So
and the answer to that is never con a con man who is better at pulling off the con than what you are.
Right. That's along the lines of don't bullshit a bullshitter.
Yeah.
Well, look, man, I mean, here's the thing. This is a good segue, actually, because when you're up to no good, given enough time and enough eyes on what's going on, it's inevitable somebody's going to find out. It's inevitable.
Well, think about all the people that have gotten in trouble for plagiarism on their papers 20 years down the road.
Sure.
They didn't have anything like Turnitin, which means the committee didn't do their job. And, they get revoked.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you can have your degree revoked.
Yeah.
Well, and listen, man, when I started as an English major in undergrad, we didn't have Turnitin or anything like that. And I used to help the department chair, who ended up being a close friend of mine. Not grade papers, because I didn't assign grades, but as like a student worker, I would spot check things. And man, I'm telling you, if you pay attention to what people write, it doesn't take long to pick up on what looks like it doesn't fit. And we didn't have Turnitin, but we had Metacrawler.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long to copy and paste with some quotes and be like, oh, I see where that came from.
And there's no quotes, no citations. And
That's right. So, I mean, obviously that's what Turnitin does. It just does it much better.
It's interesting to me because I just don't have this desire to choose to take credit for other people's work. It's one thing like, okay, you've read 1,000 different pieces of material on a subject matter. There's only so many ways you can construct a particular thought. So things can sound similar, right? I get it. You might even use some of the same things. But if you were writing it or if you are copying it from somewhere else, there's no debate about that. When you take a sentence and you change essentially 2 words to try to make that sentence your own, even putting that in parentheses and it was, Pittman 2016, dude, that should have been a direct quote. Put the page number in there from it, not I paraphrased. If they don't understand the difference from paraphrasing and a direct quote, there's a problem.
Yeah, well, because I'm not a fan at all of the single in-text citation paraphrase, because then you just played the synonym game, and that's Bush League shit. Yeah. If you're going to truly synthesize the body of work to produce an original interpretation of it, of its state, of its meaning, so forth and so on, inherently the spirit of it to me then necessitates multiple citations on that paraphrase. Otherwise, if you can't state it better or you can't really synthesize it because it's a singular thing, then just quote it. That's why we have quotes.
Right. Direct quote. Pittman posited, quote, bam, end of quote, page number.
Right.
It's not difficult.
And it's not rocket science, but I don't want to be known as a plagiarizer. No. That's more of a fear to me than what you're saying is, wow, that guy couldn't even come up with his own original stuff, so he had to steal from others.
Well, that's kind of what I'm referring to. Like, how can you look yourself in the mirror and be like, yeah, I accomplished this. I didn't. I cheated.
That's true.
Yeah. And that's what plagiarism really is. Now, there's a difference when it was, something being accidental, got that. But that's only going to be, what, a couple, maybe once it's an accident. So what is it that what's this Goldfinger says in in the James Bond movie. Oh, so Mr. Bond, sees him again. Oh, we meet again. Mr. Bond, once is a coincidence. Two, perhaps happenstance. Three times, all three meetings were planned.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Or something along those lines.
And that's exactly spot on, man. In my experience, having looked at this shit quite a bit, if people are plagiarizing intentionally, they don't plagiarize one statement.
No.
It's not just one statement. And so there's an emergent pattern. The other thing too is just like, if anybody pays attention, we all speak differently. We have little quirks, we have little ticks. We have certain phrases that we repeat because it's the way we've programmed our language as individuals. You know what I mean? That comes out in writing, man. And it's blatant. It's blatant when you have, sentence after sentence of a certain style, let's say, and then all of a sudden it massively shifts to something else in tone and structure. That's the big giveaway, is the structure. Because that's the thing, right? Why would you plagiarize? Because you can't write. Well, really, you can't think, but writing being an expression of thinking. So it's apparent when you have your, let's say, Bush League writing juxtaposed against something that's more educated and more refined. It's immediate, dude. It's clear as day. I don't know how people think they're going to get away with it.
Well, I mean, it really comes down to anything. Criminals do it because they think they're smarter.
Mm-hmm.
And then their ego gets in the way, and they keep going bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually they mess up. That's why the writing of a dissertation, eventually you can go, this language completely changed. Like, you didn't see a progression of the language changing. Like, I've gone back to read my dissertation because, my chapter 3 writing and 4 and 5 is much stronger than my 1 and 2.
Absolutely.
I was getting so beat up in the beginning, and it was like, okay, this is passable. But my 3, 4, and 5, I become much stronger in that because of how much time I took. But when all of a sudden it's like a huge shift, I start to go, wait a minute, how did this happen? So I have a particular incident that is currently going on at the university, and this dude not only couldn't write, he had to go get an editor. Never submitted his previous work and the editor's work and the note the delta changes. And I believe there's a lot of funny business going on. So as I start doing more and more investigation of this, hey, this dude just happens to pop up on LinkedIn, and he's now all of a sudden a doctor. So the more questions I started happening and started investigating, they just decided to remove me without even notifying me. So
that's problematic,
right? And then when I make a complaint to it, it's essentially ignored. Oh, I need a day or two to take a look into this. This complaint happened on Monday. Today's Thursday.
Well, Thursday is Thursday, so maybe lightning's going to strike.
And twice.
It's going to. Because I do not enjoy having my name kind of in some way, shape, or form drugged through the mud. Now, thankfully, this particular individual, who I'll keep the student's name secret for now, I am glad my name's not on that dissertation because it's garbage.
Well, this is an issue, man, and it's an issue because, to me, the strength of academic work rests on its base integrity. So, okay, so what I mean by that is we've all done dissertations, and actually we know about each other's because we all, in one way or another, work together on ours. So some are better than others in terms of their writing quality, their thinking, the design. It's a big document, man. So there's a lot of things you can analyze in terms of its quality, but there's different qualities. And as long as the quality meets the standard required by the university, whatever university, then it's passable. It doesn't have to be fantastic. It doesn't have to be great. It has to meet the standard. And to me, that standard is an expression or an embodiment of the base integrity of the scientific content in that document, right? And when you corrupt that to bypass what appears to be a problem, you're ignoring the reason that integrity exists in the first place, right? It is a hard thing to do, a dissertation. It's a hard process.
It's supposed to be.
Well, and some parts are harder or easier than others for different people. I mean, we're not all the same, right? I'm a horrible paperwork person. I'm not a management person. I don't manage processes. I hate it. I refuse to do it. So I'm not good at it. And that's where I had a lot of difficulty. And believe it or not, I actually did have a lot of difficulty with it. But I've been writing for a long time, and I've been writing APA for a really long time. So writing's not a problem for me. Right?
Oh God, you used to nail me to the wall on mine. Oh,
it's to get it to.
Writing is like phenomenal now.
It's practice, right? It's just practice.
Exactly.
And that's why, like Dan was saying, your later chapters inherently are going to be different, but they're still yours. And it's immediately apparent because most people plagiarize in the middle of a paragraph because they think they're going to hide it, right? And it's not. That actually makes it more apparent.
More apparent.
And on a document that's 5 chapters, let's say 50, 60,000 words, there's nowhere to hide. There's too much content. So
it's going to stand out.
Yeah, dude, it's like having one tree in a field and asking, where's the tree? What the fuck? It's right there.
Yeah.
You can't, if you don't see it, it's because you're willfully ignoring it. And that's the kind of issue I have with these types of integrity corruptions. It serves nobody's best interest. And in fact, what it does, this is one of the few times, because I typically don't say this. This is one of the few times where I think this is potentially the type of issue that harms everybody. I'm not a big person of, oh, this person didn't do a good job, so it makes my degree less. I don't view it that way. I understand why other people do. But because of the type of corruption that seems to be in this situation, it puts us all at risk.
It does, because now we have to defend ourselves on, hey, you know what? This didn't happen when Dr. Wood was the president of the university. This didn't happen when Dr. Barker was personally overseeing the doctoral program. This started to happen under a new regime. I think it's directly related to a foreigner that is having to oversee an American institution, that he's still bitter that they lost the war.
Maybe, man. I mean, cheating has all kinds of perverse incentives, right? I mean, a major one is stress. Well, okay, so like if you want to get a clearance, why does your economic situation matter? Well, because if you have massive amounts of debt, chances are you're more likely to being bribed. I don't know how that's arguable. Of course you are.
It's a true statement.
It doesn't mean you will, right? It doesn't mean you will take a bribe. It just means on average, people are more susceptible when they carry huge amounts of debt. Okay, well, if you suck, your only prospect of not sucking may be cheating.
Well, right. If you, I mean, why do people, still steal? Because they don't have the means to do it themselves. It's no different in terms of cheating like this. Hey, they can make whatever excuse they want. I didn't study. I, was told this by someone. I'm getting married. I'm having a baby. I had this. I had that. This is what I look at. I don't think anyone, at least from my knowledge, struggled more than Dr. Feldman during their doctoral process. That lady went through cancer during her whole process. And I never once heard her complain ever.
No, she just did the work.
How can you have she almost died. It was not, I don't know all the details, but my understanding, it was a pretty aggressive type of cancer, and the treatment was grueling, and she didn't miss a beat. So how can anyone say, oh, it's too hard? She was just, she didn't complain. She just did it.
Yeah. Well, and you see examples throughout our social structure like that. Like I remember thinking about when I got into cycling, right? And I was toying around with the idea of doing triathlons. and I watched an Ironman, which is the hardest, and it was in Kona, which is known to be the most rigorous of all, right? And this dude does it with no legs. He swims, he rides his bike, and he runs, and he does not have legs. I don't know how he lost him. Let's say he's a veteran. I don't know the whole backstory, but I saw that and I'm like, listen, man, dude, if you can't show up and at least give it an honest try, because that's what this dude was doing, right? And he ended up finishing. If I remember right, he finished in time. Of course, he didn't win, but okay, but he did it. Now, if you sign up to do something, whether it's an Ironman, a race, a job, a dissertation, you're complicit in what happens. And to me, the responsibility is on you, especially as an adult, to recognize when you're not capable of doing it and doing the honorable, courageous thing and self-selecting out.
That's why the drop rate for doctorates is so high. I mean, and I think it boils down to one word, grit. Do you have the grit to get the research done? Chapter 2 is I look back now on mine, chapter 2 is a cakewalk. It's the actual experimentation part I found to be the most difficult part. The statistics, it wasn't a strong suit of mine, but you know what? I wanted that doctorate. I wanted it bad, and my job depended on it. And, my wife had put up with 2 kids for 4 years. I'm like, I just can't let her down. I think it boils down to grit, and I just don't think some people have it. And plagiarizing is taking the easy way out, plain and simple. We had two in our cohort that were booted for plagiarizing.
Yeah. If you want it to be easier now, though, you should go to where we went at Capital, because they just seem to pass if you complain enough.
Well, but this to me, it goes back to integrity, because not only does the system itself have to have integrity to be a valid system, but the individuals that are participating in the system have to have integrity. And if you're going to, rather than doing the courageous thing and self-selecting out, if you lack integrity and you look for easy routes forward, whether that's plagiarism, cheating, there's all kinds of ways. I mean, look, this is even in the professional field. We just found out, I didn't realize this, I never thought about it, that the OSCP certification, which is a hallmark for offensive security, right, wasn't proctoring. So what do you think happens? Well, there's a business niche there. And so all these, let's say, entities set up test farms where you could sign up for the test and pay somebody else to sit for it. Now, here's the problem. I'm sure there's a majority of people that actually earned that, and we probably know some of them. I'm sure there's a handful at least of people that didn't. How do you sort through it? Now, because the entire thing is corrupted. Okay, here's simply put. When you find out that your clock's broken, you're kind of fucked, right? Because you don't know when it broke. So how many meetings did you miss? How many times were you late when you wouldn't have been if your clock wasn't broken?
Well, no, you know exactly when your clock broke because it had the last time on it.
What day, you fuck?
Dan, jeez.
Always we know it's 9:32. We just don't know if it was AM or PM or what day.
That's right.
9:32.
Yeah, you get the point. You clever bastard.
Cut him off, Jason.
No, man, touche. Well, see, but that's a critical mind. Well played. But so how do you do it? Who's dirty? Who's not?
This was back. Remember, what was the movie back in the day with Elliot Ness and the cops? He's like, they're all dirty.
Oh yeah, the Untouchables. Yeah.
Yeah. You have no idea. So what did he do in order to find someone that wasn't dirty? Got them before they ever went into the police force to bring them into his squad, before they ever had a chance for corruption. Because
I totally forgot about that.
All cops were dirty.
The law enforcement has the exact same problem now.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So,
and the internet has amplified it.
Oh, for sure.
So what do you think is going to happen when someone who's not as bright decides to go back to our alma mater, our alma mater, and they're like, oh, this is school. I can get a doctorate, no problem.
Look, and I don't even have a problem with it being easy. Let's say easier on a spectrum. It is what it is, right? There's a standard, and if you don't like it, you don't have to be complicit with it. You can choose to opt out, right? What I have a problem with is a corruption of that standard.
Yep.
If it's easy, it should be the same easy for everybody, right? Because that's the standard. But when you're going to make exceptions that corrupt that integrity, that's a catastrophic failure.
Yeah. You know, I don't know about you, Ken, but my chair was a complete tyrant when it came to the writing of the dissertation.
Mine was too. In fact, I remember a quote, and I don't know if you have that. If I see one more semicolon out of place, someone will drown a kitten. Those are the kind of comments I got from my chair. But I will tell you this, and I preach this to my students. I cannot even begin to tell you how much better my writing is. If you probably looked at my master's thesis versus my doctorate, it is just night and day difference in writing.
Now imagine that you're writing your dissertation as part of that. And then all of a sudden, midstream, it just becomes like your chapter 5.
Yeah.
Right.
Master that chapter 5 of your dissertation. But that's what I'm seeing in a lot of these people's writing. So from this point forward, after I essentially correct this wrong and unjust thing that has occurred, I will no longer associate myself with any assistance to that university. And it pains me to say that. But the corruption at this particular point in time is too great.
Well, you know, and here's the thing, man. I'll give this some balance because the three of us know one university in this conversation. So I have a good friend who's a philosophy professor, and we talk once a week pretty much over coffee through Skype or whatever. And he tells me about what he's doing because he teaches at different universities. And listen, man, it's a full scale corruption. Well, okay, but why? Well, look at where the incentives are. Let's just talk about undergrad for a second, right? We have trained people. We were trained by our parents' generation that in order to succeed economically, you needed to earn a degree, which first of all is complete horseshit. That's not true in the slightest, right? So en masse, people left trades and tried to get into knowledge work in some way. And we're not all equal, man. We're not. Not everybody's capable of doing it. So to rebalance that so that you had equality in outcome rather than just opportunity, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
Well, exactly what is happening. And listen, people say it doesn't happen in STEM. It's only the humanities that are corrupt. That is bullshit. They're not corrupt in the same way, but they're absolutely corrupt because of this incentive system. Why is there an explosion in the administration? Because you can make money being an administrator now. Right?
Yeah. Well, you know, the only thing, this is probably one of the things that's going to help me, at least in my own personal way of coming to grips with it, that at least I'm starting my MBA at University of Michigan on Sunday. So I can say, yeah, well, you know, of course, all of my academic work was proven because now I'm going to a different university that does not have any, at least at this point in time, signs of academic corruption.
Yeah.
So I'll be able to validate everything I did prior.
Well, you know, this is the origin of the phrase. I don't know if you've heard this, Ken, from the administration. We need to be student friendly.
Oh, well, yeah, like they're our customers.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, I dig that view, and I understand how there is a business part to the academy, but we can't lose track of the fact that it's an academy. And this isn't me putting it on a pedestal. It's a recognition that by its nature, it's fundamentally different, which is why almost categorically they're nonprofit or not for profit, which, you know, there's a material difference there. They're not profit. The ones that aren't well regarded. Well, why? Because, man, if I tell you have to do this in order to be successful in life, and then I'm going to charge you 6 figures for it, why wouldn't you do what you have to do to navigate that game? Uh, how do rats learn to get through the maze? Because you give them cheese at the end.
Cheese. Yeah.
With worms, it's just electrical shocks, but
Yeah, well, and slime molds will navigate to get food, but the point is they'll do anything they can to get that as quick as possible. It doesn't. I don't know why it shocks people that there's this type of rampant corruption. Look how much money's at stake.
Yeah, I mean, it's 20 grand to go where I teach a year.
Mm-hmm. Well, so think about the revenue that's being generated, though. Look at the salaries.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean. I mean, it's a perverted incentive system. That's my view on it.
Yeah, it's true. True.
When you take this case that you were talking about that just happened. Listen, man, somebody maybe should have told this person quite some time ago, and I think maybe some people were advised this way. You might want to think about just calling it a day and going and doing something else.
But you know why they're not going to do that? It's revenue.
Yeah.
Well, this cat wasn't enrolled for 4 years, so there was no revenue in this case.
Well, okay. So here's an analogy for you. So when I got into doing credit card security and doing PCI analysis and assessments, is what I should say. And I did it as just a knowledge worker, preparing for assessments. And then later on, I did it as an internal QSA. It's a perverted system because the root of PCI is in the retention of cardholder data, the data that's in that magnetic stripe, right? So who required merchants to keep that data in the first place?
PCI.
Fucking Visa and MasterCard. And you know why they did it? Because it's the only way as a merchant to fight chargebacks.
Yeah.
That's why categorically, pay attention to where you shop. If you shop at places regularly, like fast food's a perfect example of this. That's why under a certain dollar amount, they don't even have you sign receipts anymore.
McDonald's last night.
That's right.
Didn't even have it. Baskin Robbins didn't sign it.
And that obviously that's a configurable amount. And generally it's somewhere between 15 and 25 bucks at a fast food joint. Somewhere between there, that's the threshold. And here's why, because anything under that, it's so expensive to retain that data, because even the physical receipt under some assessments is cardholder data. So you have to secure it, the physical receipt. Okay. So it costs too much. So you just write it off. If under 15 bucks where I was years ago, under 15 bucks, if there's a chargeback, they would just eat it. You know how many people figured that out? More than a few, including the people that worked there.
Very true.
But that goes along with Dan's situation. Somebody's going to figure that out. And that's going to bring a migration of people to that university.
That's right.
And they'll be like, hey, why go to University of Tennessee PhD program when I can go get this another one, and it'll be much easier.
Well, that's why after a few years of teaching, I figured out, in the beginning, I had this idea that, okay, I want to be hip and cool, and I want to be part of this, the situation. I don't want to be viewed as this stodgy, uptight person. And I'm really not by personality anyway. So I'll be lenient and flexible. And guess what happens is that gets around, people figure out that you're flexible, and then they start taking advantage of it and they start pushing it. Right. And that's why after talking to some people that had been in the game longer than me and thinking about it and reading about it, I figured out that it's much better to start off very strict and very harsh. And then it doesn't attract those low performers. It keeps them away. And then you always have the option to be flexible later. Like the end of the semester, hey, can you round me up? Well, if you never round, and it's in the syllabus that you never round, you sooner or later, it takes a few semesters, but sooner or later, people will stop asking.
You know how I do that round up is I will go back and I'll look, did they turn their homework in on time? And were they in every class? Because I'm finding the longer I teach, this is my 9th year officially in 5 more days. I'll have been teaching for 9 years at a university. I find more and more people not showing up to class now, which boggles my mind. You have one job. It's to go to class.
And you're paying for it.
And you're paying me. which is why they always get onto the professor saying, you need to keep track of who shows up. And I'm like, why? These kids, these aren't kids. These are 18-year-old adults. Why should I have to keep track if they show up to class or not? That's just babysitting in my, I'm a fancy babysitter is what you're asking me to do. So
I'll tell you how I dealt with that. Because I'm serious, man. I'm not good at it. I know this from having tried it and failed several times. I'm not a manager. And that's what managers do. They take attendance. So my answer to that was, because for accreditation, like under ABET, I think you're supposed to, right?
Yeah.
And maybe
that's about to change.
Maybe business too. But anyway, my answer was, if you want me to take attendance every day, give me a fucking assistant.
Yeah.
Because I'll have the assistant do it. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I refuse to, for exactly that reason. You've already collected your money, depending on where we're at in this semester, right? So what do you care?
Yeah.
Really, what do you care? No, you're playing a game, and you're playing a game that reinforces, if not directly perpetuates, this perverted incentive system. And so think about it. If we all agree that that's true, that they're adults, they're paying for it, we shouldn't take responsibility for them, right? So forth and so on. If we agree on that, then we can ask, then how did it get to be that this becomes an accreditation requirement? Well, because somebody somewhere complained that they didn't get the education they paid for, when in reality, they didn't show up. So it's a classic regulation, right? You over-regulate to compensate for lack of standards, right? That's how I look at it.
Full circle.
Yep.
Hey, I want to switch topics real quick. I wanted to get y'all's opinion on this. So I just finished teaching IT law and policy. So we've been talking about why we have policies and why we have, why we have those to protect the company, not necessarily the employees. So a student emailed me last night and he says, hey, we just got out of class. We didn't talk about this, but a bunch of guys at my company are complaining they can't wear sandals to work, but the women can. And we don't have policy on it. And I said, well, I can see why. It's a business environment. They don't want you wearing sandals. He's like, but they let the women. And we are getting in a very gender conscious society now. I said, I didn't know. So what would you say? I said, let them wear sandals. The men.
I mean, well, but I don't know that my answer is going to surprise anybody. I'm categorically against any type of dress code.
Yeah.
I mean, if
as we look at Dan with a suit and tie on.
Hey, maybe the guy's comfortable. I don't think twice about it.
When I'm at work, I have a work outfit. Even when I was at Silent Circle, I wore dress shirt and slacks, French cuffs every day. That's what I choose to wear.
Sure.
I didn't enforce what anyone else should or should not wear. That's not what matters to me. I dress for myself and what I want to do. So I agree more with Jason in that don't have a dress code. Now, if you're in front of customers, the rule is you dress to the level of the customer. You're in a consulting business, right? I mean, that's just the rule of thumb, because you don't necessarily overdress and you don't under. That's your customer. You kind of adapt. Here at where I work, there is a dress code, so to speak, for where you work,
right,
based on what you're doing, and they actually do talk about what is acceptable for men and women to wear. Now, you have a choice. You don't have to like it. You can not work there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I agree.
Right? That's your choice. I mean, think, here it even gets to let's take it, even to the next step. The New York Yankees have a dress code. You cannot have a beard. You can have a mustache, but you cannot have any other facial hair. You don't like it? Don't sign with the Yankees. Why do people sign with the Yankees? Because they pay the most money. Everything has a price.
Hair policy too. Didn't some player a couple years ago?
They have quite a bit. Yeah, there's quite a bit of what they've got going on. So you have that choice. But
no, that's a good point. I was just curious because he talked about a gender neutral dress code they have at their company. And I said, what?
Well, here's the thing. Life's not fair.
No, it's not.
No, it's horrible. I mean, life is misery, man. It is. By its very nature, it's hostile. You have to make the best of it. So to add one more thing real quick, because we probably should wrap up here pretty soon too.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing I would say if I was that person's manager. Why are you not so busy being productive that you notice what other people wear, one way or the other?
That's
you should be working hard to get your work done to the point where you don't notice. And that's actually is the problem I have with dress codes to begin with. Is you should be so concerned about productivity and optimization and doing your best that it shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Dan's right. I mean, I've always seen him present himself a certain way, but I don't particularly notice it because we're too busy getting shit done.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is what I choose. People ask me here, now that I've taken over as CIO, can we change the dress code? I don't care. Look, if you have to go downtown where we have customers coming in and out, you better dress appropriately. If I have to hear complaints about how you're dressing, then we have an issue. Dress appropriately, whatever that is. I don't care if they wear golf shirts. You're down here, it's the summer. We're not near the customers. Wear a golf shirt. That's up to you. I don't have a preference.
Yeah.
But if you better have at least a shirt, tie, and sport coat hanging around if you have to go downtown. You go downtown in that sport coat, unless you're IT support, I'm going to hear about it, and then we have a problem.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So
maybe that's a good place to wrap it up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fireworks.
Actually, and when I have a problem, everyone's going to have a problem.
Well, yeah, because I think that's the social rule, really. The social rule isn't wear a suit. The social rule is don't cause problems for people around you.
The problem is you can't work somewhere and not have someone. There's always one bad apple in the bunch.
Sure. Well, and naturalistically, the bunch will expel them if there's not these artificial perversions and corruptions of the system.
You hope.
It's natural. Of course you'll get rid of them. They're underperforming. They're causing problems. They'll get exiled. Naturally. You don't even have to do anything. My problem, to wrap this up, which takes us right back to where we started, is when you start artificially monkeying with these types of systems, you introduce perversion and corruption. Let it regulate itself.
Correct.
Yeah.
Stop with the nonsense of, well, we owe you. You can imagine this conversation, right? Well, I guess we owe you this degree since you paid this much money. No. You don't owe shit.
What you're paying for is the knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
How you choose to act upon that said knowledge is entirely up to you.
Yep.
You waste it, you get no degree.
You're paying for opportunity and access, not for outcome.
Yep.
Right.
This ain't McDonald's, man. You didn't pay me for
effort.
Right.
I hate that word.
What?
Hey, well, Jason, you put in such a good effort on your first 5 chapters. It's okay. I'm going to give you that doctorate.
Right.
Effort.
So in this area, we're more about Burger King, and we'll use the Burger King phrase. You don't always, in this case, you don't always get it your way.
No.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Yeah.
This isn't Burger King.
That's right. You didn't pay for a Whopper. I don't owe it to you.
Right.
You paid for me to let you in the front door.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even that's pushing it. I mean,
yep. True. So,
all right, guys.
Well, just so our world knows, next Thursday I won't be available more than likely. So
okay,
because it'll be an immersion week.
Sweet. I'll message you Ken offline and we'll see if we want to do one.
Yeah. Well, of course I do. You don't have to ask me.
Yeah. Let's do it.
I have family in town next week, so I got to check. But
okay. Well, if we need to change a time, we can do it.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay.
All right, folks.
All right, everybody. That's 77. Have a good week.
Have a good
Be
week.
excellent to one another.
Oh, Lord.
Roxanne.